Well, there's two things to consider over here. Just across Saudi Arabia. Now, if you look at a map, some of you, I hope you will after this broadcast today, will go and get a map of that Middle East part of the world. And if you look just across Saudi Arabia, there is the Strait of Hormuz, where 40% of the world's crude oil travels on any given day. Much of it then goes through the Suez Canal and goes into Europe. Much of it goes around Africa and other places. But the price and the cost of going that distance around Africa would be prohibitive. So if they close down the Suez Canal, you've got a second problem here. Now, that is that there is a SUMID, S-U-M-I-D, pipeline in Egypt. This likewise is on the verge of a problem. It's 220 miles long. There's 1.1 million barrels of oil, crude oil, that travels through it on any given day. And at any moment, that pipeline could be shut down. If it did, you would see an escalation of gasoline prices at the gas pump immediately in the United States of America. And there are only 30 people, so I'm told, guarding that SUMID pipeline. Everybody else is out there fighting for Mubarak, and only 30 people on a 220-mile pipeline. Very easily, they could blow it up. Now, this is escalating to the point that Israel, I'm sure they're scared to death, because Egypt and Israel, there's 160 miles that their borders actually join. And this is what the Muslim, oh my goodness, folks, this Muslim Brotherhood, I beg of you to go through the internet and look and see what it is. This is a religious and political group founded on the belief that Islam is not simply a religion, but a way of life. It follows the Quran. It is militant. It wants to take over the Middle East. They said the first of this week that their goal now, they feel it is their time. They feel that right now they should begin, and that this is the time they will take over the Middle East. As a result, you have riots in Jordan right now. Tunisia, they're burning schools right today, right now while this program's going on. Dubai, oh my goodness, Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, gave every citizen in the country, if they could prove their citizenship, they gave them $30,000 very quietly just the other day. This never hit the national news. Why? They said to all the people, we care about you. We want you to be, don't go the way that Egypt is going. Be quiet. Saudi Arabia, the House of Salt is scared to death because they have already said they'll cause a problem there, and the majority of America's oil comes from there. Yemen, there are riots going on right now. This is so much bigger than what the average person recognizes.
And this is what I'm trying to get your grasp of this. That it seems like the focal point is there for Egypt, not Tunisia. But everybody's talking about this started in Tunisia. What I'm getting is that the Tunisian situation is just isolated and separate. What about Yemen, Jordan, Algeria, Albania, Iraq? Are these connected to Egypt, or are these separate civil uprisings or something else?
No, they positively are connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is being supported by the world elite. I could see the hand of the CIA written all over this uprising in Egypt. And our president sits up there, and his words are so idle, it's almost unbelievable. Yes, all of this is one composite move of the Muslim Brotherhood, and their desire is to take over everything in the Middle East, Brent.
All right. Well, I have one other off-topic, meaning off topics that we're going to talk about today. I have one other question I briefly just want to touch on with you. There have been reports floating around the alternative press and on the Internet concerning free trade zones that were established some 70 years ago that are supposedly going to allow Chinese companies to operate outside of U.S. laws. Now, the allegations have been made that Obama is giving away U.S. land for these purposes. Now, I looked into this, and as far as I've been able to tell, these current stories are actually rumors that grew out of an off-the-cuff remark made by a broadcaster. Am I right? Are they right? Can you tell us anything at all about whether these free trade zones are being designed to be areas where there's no U.S. law and the Chinese can simply march in?
Oftentimes I'm asked questions like this on a talk show, and I go to the people that I know, whom I call the global elite or the elite, and I ask them the question. They have not said anything about zones in America such as you're speaking of. I have heard about them. I've been sent many emails about it. I have no knowledge of it whatsoever. They are not willing to talk about it, and therefore I have to honestly say, until I can get them on a conversation about this, I don't know. But I will give you one thing that they did say recently. I was on the phone with one of my elite friends, and he said to me, Chaplain, don't pay any attention to what's happening in North and South Korea. And he said, don't necessarily pay any attention to the Middle East, because remember, he had told me within 4 to 5 months there will be a conflict in the Middle East. Well, it has happened exactly like he said, even though I didn't know what country it would be in. Now, he said, don't pay any attention to what's going to happen in the Middle East. This was before Egypt got to the point that it is today. He said, Chaplain, the thing you want to watch. Folks, are you ready for this? And Brent is right. It connects with China. He said to me, Chaplain, China is the big one. Those were his exact words. China is the big one. China and Russia, keep your eyes on them. They know that there's something in the wind in relation to China and Russia. Now, I'm prone to believe from the visit of the Chinese head of state with our president just a few weeks ago that China will probably increase the value of its currency. Whenever it does, this decreases the value of the purchasing power of the American dollar, and this is going to cause massive inflation in America like you can't even comprehend. And he said to me, don't worry about any of these other conflicts in the world. He said, keep your eyes on China and Russia, Brent.
And I appreciate the response, especially the part you said about this free trade zone thing. The reason I asked is simply, it's been all over the place, and I've been the lone sane voice in the midst of all of this, and you've just helped me to know that my instincts are good on that topic. In our previous discussion, there were things we never were able to get to, but it was apparent that the New World Order crowd has some language, like certain buzzwords that they use to facilitate communication between each other. Can you educate us? What can you teach us about these buzzwords, and how can we benefit from that knowledge?
Unless one of the elite say something to me, I appreciate what you just said about these free trade zones. Unless I can get them to respond, I refuse to answer on programs about things I don't know. And I agree with you. There's some things there that are a little shady yet, and they have not been willing to talk to me. When I lived with the elite of the world for those 3 years, I sat across the dinner table from, they were not in my church. I was on their pipeline. And therefore, I was considered kind of like a mascot. And one of the first things I remember that I learned was to listen to their buzzwords. And I learned this because of their code of ethics. Now, let me explain. You see, I was a pastor of a church for 12 years prior to going to Alaska as an aviation missionary, a church of about 400 people in Florida. And I had graduated from Bible college, had a bachelor's degree, and I had learned to deal with people and to analyze people. So when I got to the pipeline and was thrown into the midst of this, I don't know how to describe these people, the most unusual people I'd ever met on the face of the earth. And when I was thrown into the midst of them, some of the things that I found out about them were just startling beyond words. One of them is they have a code of ethics. They do. Now, it's not the same code of ethics that a Christian would have, that a person would have who is a believer in the Word of God, the Bible, but they do have a code of ethics, and Pardon
me, Pastor Lindsey, I want people to know that you know the stories of the mafiosa and everything, and how they have a very high code of ethics. It may not be your code of ethics, but it is not possible to have any kind of organization without some code of ethics. Otherwise, the globalists would be eating each other up, not us.